Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel and making some time out of your day to spend with me. Always appreciate that. You guys know one of the things that I get a lot as far as on the comments is people, they love to hear the old stories from back in the day of tournament fishing. And guys, I've got one for you that happened about probably 30 years ago. It's the biggest mess up I ever had in tournament fishing. The biggest mistake I ever made. I'm going to share the story with you guys in today's video. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Also, guys, quick reminder, we've only got a few days left in the October sale on my Solarbat Series RB2 and RB3 series sunglasses. If you get a pair by the end of October, you can get them at 20% off. So I'll put the Solarbat link in the description to my glasses if you guys would like to get a pair. And I'd suggest two pair. Get the mossback green for the brighter days and the high contrast yellow for the cloudy low light days. Those are the two I wear most all the time, so much appreciated there. Okay guys, this is actually one of the first stories I ever told on my YouTube channel about 4 years ago, but we've added over 100,000 people since I told this. So I've had a lot of people wanting old stories, so I thought this is a good one to share because there's been probably over 100,000 people that hadn't heard this. If you've heard this story, you're one of the very first members of Intuitive Angling, because this has been a long time since I shared this one. But this is unbelievable, guys. I was fishing, it was a Bassmaster tournament down on the Arkansas River I think it was out of Pine Bluff. Yeah, it was out of Pine Bluff, out of the Arkansas River. And I'd been there one other time before fishing, but this particular tournament, I decided that, I really wanted to find something that was hard to get to, hard to access. And back then, you got to remember, we didn't have any GPSs. All we had was a paper map. So when you ran down the river, you had a flasher, just an old flasher, and I had a paper map sitting on my lap. So as you're navigating up the river, and the Arkansas River, they've got a bunch of little sloughs and little cuts and backwaters. It's, some of it's pretty difficult to navigate, especially with just a paper map on your lap and a compass. That we had a compass on the boat. So I'm running up this particular channel up, or the main river, and I notice there's a big island in the middle of the river. This island's about a mile long, and there's a chute on the back side of the island that shows on the map. And then there's a couple little creeks off of this chute. So I knew that this chute, since it had some creeks flowing into it, probably there was some deeper water back there. So when I came up on this island off the main river, I turned right to go into this chute running down the map, and I get about probably halfway down this chute, which is about probably a mile. So this whole thing's about 2 miles long, and it started getting shallower and shallower and shallower. And I'm at the point now where I keep thinking it's going to drop off and get deeper, but it doesn't. It just keeps getting shallower and shallower. And I know I can't shut down because I'm in like, a foot and a half of water. So I just trimmed the motor up and I just kept going. And all of a sudden it gets shallower and shallower. And all of a sudden, the boat comes up on its side and I'm stuck on the mud or sand or whatever it is. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is like the first day of practice, right off the bat in the morning. So I get out of the boat, and back then I had a Ranger, I think it was a Ranger 354. It was a 17.5 foot boat with a 150 on it. A little bit lighter boat than we have right now. So I get out of the boat, and it's like ankle deep. I'm like, I am freaking screwed, because I'm like 1.25 miles up into the chute, and there's nobody around. There's nothing there. I mean, I'm in the middle of the sticks out there, and I have no clue on what's in front of me. I don't know how, deep. I don't know where the deep water is. I know what's behind me because I just came through there, and I ran about a half a mile through water that was 1.5 feet deep, or maybe a foot deep, probably a foot deep, because because I was throwing up mud the whole time. And literally my boat, it's stuck, and it's on its side like that. It's like one side of the boat was completely out of the water, and it's like I could rock it back and forth. So anyway, I said, okay, what am I going to do here? And so I started walking the other direction, like the direction I was headed. I was going to see how far it was before it dropped off deeper. And I walked and walked and walked. And I walked like a quarter of a mile and it still wasn't any deeper. It was still ankle deep. So you got to remember, I'm literally like an ankle deep water where the boat's at. So anyway, I just, I thought to myself, what the heck am I going to do? So the only thing that I figured that I could do is like, I've got to figure out how to turn this boat around. And you got to realize back then that the boats were quite a bit lighter. So I said, I've got to figure out how to turn this boat around, and I've got to figure out how to dig a channel to get out of here, because we didn't have cell phones back then. I had no cell phone. Excuse me. I had no idea. There was no sounds anywhere. I'm literally stuck out on this freaking middle of nowhere in the Arkansas bayous. So anyway, I took about an hour, and I was able to get the nose of the boat, and I'd pull it as hard as I could, and it'd move about 3 or 4 inches. Then I'd pull it as hard as I could, and it'd move about 3 or 4 inches. So after about an hour of me tugging and pulling on this boat, I was able to turn the boat where it was pointing back the direction that I was. And at that point, I said, I have got to figure out how to dig some channel out of here. So what I did, and it just was fortunate to me, it was sort of like this sandy, mucky stuff. It's like you could stand on it. You'd sink down a little bit, but not bad. So anyway, back then you always had to carry a paddle with you as part of safety equipment. So I took my paddle and I started digging out a hole where my prop was, because again, if I trimmed my motor down the way it was, it would just, you couldn't even trim it level. It was so shallow. So I dug out this big hole around my prop where I could actually get my prop in there and trim the motor down. Of course, the hole filled up with water, and I got back in the boat and I goosed it. And every time I'd goose it, the boat would go 6 inches and then it'd stop. Then I'd get out of the boat again and I'd dig another little hole, enough to where I could get the motor in there, and I'd goose the motor again and it'd go about 6 inches and stop. So anyway, I did this for the rest of the day, up until the motor would start overheating. Then I'd have to let it cool off. And here it is. I've been at this all day long, and now it's getting close to getting dark. So I'm going to have to spend the night out here. So anyway, it starts to get dark there. I put my rain suit on, and I'm there overnight. I sleep there overnight on this thing. Have no way to call my, anybody I know, my family or anything. I'm out there on this mud flat. So the next morning I get up and do the same thing. All day long, it's like I'm digging this hole out, and I'd move forward maybe 6 inches or a foot at a time. And after doing this for the entire next day, I was able to get out where it was deep enough where I could actually get out of the boat and I could start pushing the boat. The boat, it wasn't floating, but I could push it with my own power, about a foot or two at a time. And I kept doing this, and finally I got it out in deep enough water where the boat would float. Now, I'm 2.5 days in there, and I have had this motor overheated probably 50 times, where the bell went off for the overheat thing. And I said, I got no way, the only way else I'm going to get out of here is with a helicopter. So after 2 days of doing this, I finally got the boat out to where it was floating, and I started to get up on plane, and it wouldn't get up on plane. And I trimmed the motor up, and the prop, I had goosed it so many times in that sand and that mud that it had reduced the prop down to like, it was as thin as a potato chip, and the blades were like that long on it. Literally, I had self-destructed half of the prop. So fortunately, I had a spare prop. I put it back on there, and I just knew that motor I said, there's no way this motor is going to make it. I have overheated and abused this thing, and it got up on plane. I made it back to the takeoff area, and I went straight to the service crews, and they went through it and cleaned everything out and serviced everything on it. And I was able to go out the last day of practice there. But I tell you what, that was just unbelievable, man. That was like, I had a bunch of stories like that where I've gotten stuck. Here's the difference now. Back then, when we had smaller boats, like those 17-foot boats, you could move them around yourself. And now with those big 20, 21-foot boats with the 250 horsepowers, you can't do that. On my old 150 that I used to have, you could take the cowling off it and hand crank it. There was a hand crank rope, so it was a lot more maneuverable. And I was always trying to get into the hardest places. And also back then, the service crews, if you had a problem, they would fix it for free. I remember one year I went through, I think, 6 lower units where I'd actually knocked the lower unit off or busted a prop shaft and had them fix it 6 times, trying to get back in these hard to access areas. Eventually they quit doing that. They made you start paying for your stuff, and boats got bigger, and as you had to pay for the stuff and the boats got bigger and more expensive, I quit trying to access those hard to reach areas. But anyway, that's the biggest time I ever messed up in a tournament, as far as not really using my head as far as the smartest thing. What I should have done is, when I was running back in that chute and it started getting shallower, I should have shut the boat down and waited in there, waited as far as I could to sort of see what I had up against me, instead of just going through it, with no idea. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. Hope you're all well. Talk later.